Hello, friends and dear viewers. I welcome you all to the current session, wherein I am going to discuss about the control measures of soil erosion, or what the measures have to take up to control soil erosion. Okay, friends, the erosion of soil by various agents can be controlled by developing a strong vegetative cover in order to increase plant water use. Plant water use. It can be done in various ways. It can be done in various ways. All right. Number one, strip cropping. Strip cropping. And strip cropping involves planting of crops in the form of strips. Strip cropping involves planting of crops in the form of strips. Okay, and this method of checking soil erosion and wind erosion is done by four ways. It is done by four ways. And number one, contour strip cropping. Contour strip cropping. The crops are grown at right angles to the natural slope of the land. Friends, you can imagine here in a given area where we are practicing agriculture, here the crops are grown at right angles to the natural slope of the land. That is about contour strip cropping. The other one, field strip cropping. Here the crops are grown in strips of uniform width in a horizontal manner. So you can understand, in contour strip cropping, following the natural slopes, that is, the land is not even to see, of course, having many ups and downs. So in that types of areas, we can crop, we can plant the trees in right angles in order to conserve the soil or to control that soil erosion. Whereas in field strip cropping, here you can see the crops are grown in strips of uniform width and in a horizontal manner, because here the land available is in basically a horizontal platform type. So there is every possibility for us to take up field strip cropping in these kinds of areas. Next one, wind strip cropping. Wind strip cropping. The crops are grown at right angles to the direction of the wind. Be clear, dear friends. Here also the crops are grown at right angles, as we have seen in contour strip cropping. But here the crops are grown at right angles to the direction of the wind. To the direction of the wind. So that is the difference. Now let us take up this buffer strip cropping. Buffer strip cropping involves various types of plants and annual crops which are grown in between the strips mentioned in field strip cropping and wind strip cropping. Hope you got the point, or you can understand the difference, dear friends. In buffer strip cropping, we can see the involvement of both types of cropping, that is field strip cropping as well as the wind strip cropping, right? Next, restoration of fertility of soil. A very common way of restoring soil fertility is by growing leguminous plants. Hope friends you can remember. Leguminous plants are very well known to enrich the soil fertility. This we can know from things like the biogeochemical cycles, and especially with the nitrogen cycle, where we can see the things like the symbiosis, the commensalism, the mutualism, etc. In those instances, of course, in one of the instances like symbiotic activity, that is symbiosis. Symbiosis, and that is a particular situation where the plants which are growing in soils, and that too lack of nitrogen, and in order to compensate or in order to take up the nitrogen, these plants, they take up the help of the bacteria. They take up the help of bacteria, of course, various types, nitrosomas, there's bacteria, etc. So many kinds are there. And with the help of that bacteria, these plants, they take the nitrogen. And in return, these plants, they provide food for the bacteria. And that is about symbiosis. Okay. So why we have discussed all these things means growing leguminous plants in order to restore soil fertility, right? So what happens by growing leguminous plants in different places? What happens? This aids to fixing nitrogen to the soil and adding to humus, of course, adding humus to the soil. That increases its porosity. Porosity means nothing but the spaces between the soil particles. If that is increased, dear friends, so there is every chance for the water, of course, rainwater or any kind of this. By any source, the water can enter into the deep layers of the soil, right? That is to do with porosity and water holding capacity and fertility of the soil. So, by uh, restoring soil fertility through raising leguminous plants and thus aiding in fixing nitrogen to the soil and adding humus to the soil, which increases its porosity, water holding capacity, and fertility of soil. Commercial fertilizers like ammonium phosphate, ammonium sulfate, potassium nitrate, rock phosphate. This is a basic slag, dear friends. Rock phosphate, it's a basic slag. Okay. All these things, they add to the fertility of the soil. Now, erosion of soil by wind, how it can be reduced. Okay. Now we are going to see how soil erosion by wind can be reduced. Number one, by minimizing the amount of soil bared through reduced vegetation. In other words, we can also say minimizing the amount of soil bared through reduced vegetation. Wherever there are chances to reduce vegetation. There are every chances for getting that soil barren. So we have to reduce those kind of activities. That is number one. Retaining the stubble, retaining the stubble of the crops in the soil. Of course, crop rotation may be encouraged. Crop rotation may be encouraged, and proper grazing management should be practiced. Grazing management should be practiced. And lastly, vegetation may be retained in sensitive areas. Vegetation may be retained in sensitive areas. So these are the five techniques or five processes or methods that should be taken up in order to control or curtail or limit the soil erosion taken up by the wind. Right. Now, soil erosion by landslips is usually caused by excess moisture in the soils of slippy areas, and this can be averted by good vegetation and constructing physical structures in order to stabilize the slipping away of soil. Okay, friends. Now, salinization of soil caused by accumulation of free salts can be prevented by growing deep rooted plant species in order to maximize the cycling of water and nutrients in the root system of the plants. Humic acids are also used to prevent excess salinization. Right. The soil pH has an important effect on the vegetation. The soil pH has an important effect on the vegetation. The pH levels of soil are induced by acid rain and soil contamination by acids or bases. The pH of alkaline soil may be lowered by adding aluminum sulfate. Friends, I think you got it. In order to lower the alkalinity of the soil, the pH of alkaline soils, that can be lowered by adding aluminum sulfate, iron sulfate, sulfur urea, urea phosphate, ammonium nitrate, ammonium phosphates, ammonium sulfate, and of course monopotassium phosphate. Soil conservation affected by promoting the growth of macroscopic and microscopic soil organisms. Okay, soil conservation is affected by promoting the growth of macroscopic and microscopic soil organisms. Friends, I can give you a very good example here so that you can clearly understand what I have explained in my earlier lines. Okay. Generally, the earthworms cause aeration of the soil, and its excreta. The excreta of the earthworms contains a mixture of minerals and plant nutrients, which is in a more accessible form for easy uptake by the roots of plants. And several investigations have revealed that the excreta of earthworms are rich in nitrogen. They are rich in nitrogen, phosphates, and potash. Okay, and mushrooms, generally examples like yellow fungus, yellow fungus that help in decay of the organic matter. Yellow fungus or mushrooms generally help in decay of the organic matter. Soil microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, they carry out the phenomenon of fermentation or decay. Soil microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, they carry out the phenomenon of fermentation or decay and enrich the soils. The use of insecticides and herbicides sometimes may cause unforeseen and unintended death of soil organisms, often leading to deleterious consequences. I repeat once again, dear friends, the use of insecticides and herbicides sometimes that may cause unforeseen and unintended death of soil organisms and often leading to deleterious consequences. And now, promoting the use of anthropogenic chemicals in farming, and that must be discouraged. Promoting the use of anthropogenic chemicals in farming must be discouraged. That should not at all be encouraged at any cost. And soils may be rejuvenated by the process of active mineralization. Friends, in my one of my earlier episode, we have come across with the landforms, how the landforms are formed with different agents, and particularly while dealing with the landforms that are formed by the running water, there we have come across with the age with the different ages of rivers, and how it acts, and what are the activities that are taken up by river when it is in youthful stage and middle age and becoming older. Okay, so now soils may be rejuvenated by the process of active mineralization, that is adding of a broad range of minerals like phosphorus, zinc, and selenium, right? In order to safeguard the life supporting capacity of soils for the future generations, the quality and the quantity of soils must be protected. In order to safeguard the life supporting capacity of soils for the future generations, the quality as well as the quantity of soils must be protected, right? And now, rotation of crops. Friends, I think you all know well what is rotation of crops. But even then, I'll try to give a small explanation. Here, friends, rotation of perennial crops and leguminous plants alternating with the cash crops controls soil erosion. I will repeat once again, friends. Rotation of perennial crops and leguminous plants alternating with cash crops, and that leads to control of soil erosion. Perennial crops, friends. People dealing with botany, they can well understand by this word what annuals, biennials, or perennials means. So, While practicing agriculture or raising crops, we have to follow this rotation of crops. We have to follow rotation of crops wherein perennial crops and leguminous plants that should be alternately grown that should be alternately grown with various cash crops which we generally used to raise, okay, and therefore that helps in controlling the soil erosion. And now leguminous plants increase the nitrogen status of the soil. This we all know very well, friends. So many times we have encountered this particular point. Now, control of grazing. Earlier episode, friends, we have come across with this desertification process, wherein we discussed about the Sahara Desert and what happened there, and what are the consequences that have taken up in the formation of that Sahara Desert. Okay, and now once we will let us try to regain the correct. The herbivorous animals eat the various short parts of the plants and thus weakening the underground root system. Here, the herbivorous animals, by eating the various short parts of the plants, so that leads to weakening the underground root system and the soil, due to which the loose soil is blown off or washed away easily. Okay, so in that way, the grazing, the herbivore, I mean the way the herbivorous animals are grazing, that is contributing to the removal of soil. Now, afforestation. Now, it is afforestation. So, friends, afforestation is nothing but it is the process of raising the plants. Deforestation, similarly, removal of the greenery. Afforestation is the process or the programs which we take up, the plantation programs which we take up. It is collectively called as afforestation, and with various names depending upon the circumstances, situations, availabilities, policies, legislations, etc. Let us see about afforestation in a brief. And in afforestation, you can see the encouragement or encourage the growth of trees. Encourage the growth of trees. And these trees serve as natural dams to prevent erosion of soil by the runoff water. So, by encouraging, by taking up the plantation program, and those trees, they serve as natural dams to prevent erosion of soil by the runoff water. By the runoff water. Now, let us see about terracing. Terracing, okay. In terracing, we can see small flat fields. We can see small flat fields, and which are called as terraces. Which are called as terraces, and maybe prepared in the slopes. Maybe prepared in the slopes. And building of dams across streams and deep ditches or gullies. Building of dams across the streams and deep ditches or gullies, that leads to control of erosion of soil by water. So, erosion which takes place due to the water, or in other words, if water is the agent of erosion, soil erosion, in that particular places, if we take up the building of dams across streams and deep ditches or gullies, there may be good chances to control the soil erosion. The dams, they store large quantities of water, and that may be used for irrigation purposes or consumption purposes at various places. Planting of trees, shrubs, grasses, as well as weeds across the deep ditches or gullies, they also helps in preventing this erosion. Friends, I'll come back once again. These dams, which are built in across streams, ditches, etc., they help in storing water. They help in storing water. Whereas planting of trees, shrubs, grasses, and weeds across the deep ditches or gullies, they help in preventing erosion. They help in preventing erosion. Friends, I remember in our earlier episode we have discussed about the gully erosion, rill erosion, etc. So you can remember easily. In order to check or control those types of erosions, we can plant trees or shrubs, and grasses, weeds, etc. Right. Wind erosion can be checked by encouraging extensive plantation of trees like Sacrum munja, Sacrum munja, Cenchrus ciliaris, Cenchrus ciliaris, Leptadenia spartium, Leptadenia spartium, and Pyrotechnica, and Leptadenia pyrotechnica, Panicum antidotale, Panicum antidotale, Acacia senegal, Acacia senegal, and Parkinsonia species, Prosophis zuriflora, and many others also. Prosophis zuriflora and many others also. So friends, these are all the methods or various techniques that should be adapted in order to check or in order to control the soil erosion, which has taken up by various agents and through various processes. So right now what all we have discussed, these are all the things that helps in conservation of the soil. So in order to conserve the soil resource, we have to take up these many things, or we have to follow these many processes in order to conserve the soil. Basically, in our earlier episode, we have a discussion about the formation of soil also, dear friends, wherein we have discussed that in order to form a centimeter thick of soil, it literally takes 1,000 years, and that way hard work that should be done by the nature. So, in order to control or check the erosive methods or the processes that are leading to degradation of soil, there is every necessity for all the responsible citizens of all the nations to control this degradation of soil and to take up various plantation programs or activities that helps in enriching, that helps in afforestation, so that the soil is being conserved. So I think, dear friends, this is time for us to conclude with. And in my coming episodes, we are going to deal with demography, dear friends. We are going to deal with demography. And so, friends, I think you all enjoyed this session. Hope we'll meet in our next session with a good topic. Thank you. Thank you, Nodal.